Hello, and thanks for joining us on our third Throwing Your Parents Under the podcast. No, let's try that again.
Oops.
Hello, and thanks for joining us on our third Throwing Your Parents Under the Bus podcast. I am Jane Johnson, and I was thrown under the bus after both my sons totaled a car within 6 weeks of each other because I pretty much chose the cheapest and easiest driver ed program I could find. Now, with me today is veteran crash investigator and driver safety expert, Mike Pehl. How are you, Mike?
I'm great, and I just welcome everybody here to, learn some safe, fun stuff, we'll say. These podcasts are going to be fun, but they're going to be very learning and eventful, let's put it that way.
And life-saving.
And life-saving.
Yes.
We're the lifesavers. That's
Yes.
what we say sometimes.
We need t-shirts, lifesavers.
Well, since you're the social media expert, Miss Natasha, and the keeper of our student enrichment activities, I think you could do that for us.
I think I could do that.
How are you today?
Doing great.
All right. Well, Mike, Natasha, and I are here together as members of the DriveSafeRideSafe Team, and we hope to help parents and students to learn from other people's success or failure on today's chaotic roads. Now, our courses, just to give you a background, include enrichment activities that our students need to do with their parents throughout the course. Now, each of these enrichment is used to teach students about real life driving situations, and then the students and parents perform them and then send us their observations. Now, Miss Natasha is the keeper of these observations, and she picks a few each week. And today on this episode, we're going to hear from students who observe drivers turning into the wrong lane, changing lanes at the wrong time, and a dad who thinks everyone on the road is an idiot. So with that said, Natasha, what do you have for us for the first observation?
The first one comes from Clara, and she's from Robbinsdale, Minnesota. The activity is to discuss with your parents their stories of how they learned to drive and what was the scariest thing that happened to them. So she writes, tragically, one of my mom's friends was playing a game with her friend where they would stick their heads out the window to get splashed by puddles when driving. She was too young when her head crashed into a mailbox and she lost her life that day. It was a reminder for me to be aware of what is going on with the passengers inside my car and what I can do to keep them safe.
Wow. Mike?
Oh, yeah, just a tragedy. That's been my life. I mean, taking accidents that people die from and then reconstructing them on the A, B's, and C's of the guilty party and the innocent party. And people learn from that. And I remember back when I was a kid, we didn't have seatbelts. I remember standing on the front seat and my mom used her hand to, every time she braked, there was 5 of us kids in the front seat standing up. And the seatbelt was my mom's arm. So how dumb was that? Nowadays we can look at that. But again, I remember my dad always saying, keep your hands inside the car, you could have something cut them off. Well, again, these games in cars, a car is not a place to have a game, and come on, just stick a head out a window to get splashed by I don't even know where that comes from. But anyway, in this situation, it wasn't a good thing. So again, you as the driver need to control that car. More importantly, you as the rider need to be a safer rider. So not a good decision on either part.
All right.
Excuse me.
Yeah, that is a tough one. I know we've had, mailbox golf, I think they called it or something. And you had a story about that at one time with some boys that didn't end well. So we've heard that story before, and it's kind of unnerving to hear it again.
Right. Yes.
All right, Natasha?
Yes. The second one also comes from Clara from Robbinsdale. And this was from activity 6, which is take a ride with your parents and ask if you can be the co-pilot. So you sit in the passenger seat and you advise them on when it's safe to proceed, either at a green light or a merging situation. And her observation was, during this exercise, I noticed the mistakes my dad was making. I noticed that he turned into the wrong lane and changed lanes in a place where it was not permitted.
So Clara, awesome job again. And parents, I try and apologize up front in the course to let your sons and daughters be that great observer, because what we're doing is we are creating a really good driver, rider, and that is forever. So, don't, when they come to you and say, Mike says, because I'm their teacher in this course, let it go, because we're framing a mind for the future. We're framing a mind for defensive driving. And unfortunately, not even seeing the video, I know what dad is doing. And when he's turning into a multi-lane road, instead of taking the closest lane, the left lane, he's going into the right lane. I mean, 99% of the drivers do it. The problem is if our sons and daughters do that on their driver's test, that's a wrong lane. That is an automatic disqualification on their driver's test. So
I failed my driver's test twice because of that.
Yes. So more importantly, let's talk the right way. So the law says you get the closest lane available when you make a left. The person that's making the right gets the closest lane. So when you go all the way into the second lane and a car comes from the right and hits you, it is going to be your fault because you are not in your lane. That person turning right gets the right of way to the closest lane they have. So be careful in turning into the wrong lanes. And as far as doing the lane changes in unpermitted area, you know what? As a young person, well, let's put it this way. Insurance companies, banks, to get credit now are actually looking at insurance, tickets on your record. And does that make you a better? There is so much more that goes into driving than just safe driving. I mean, our record goes into credit apps now. I mean, it's amazing. So you know what? Just do it the right way. It's so simple. Just we know what's out there, and I know it's 2 or 3 seconds later. I know you want to get in there now, but it just means we need to think ahead more. So great job though, Clara.
All right.
Yes. Okay, and then the third one comes from Logan out of Atwater, Minnesota. The assignment was to take a road trip with your parents, observe the actions of other vehicles on the road, and try to predict the behavior of other drivers in advance. Explain how they could affect your safety and write down your what you think you need to do as a driver to avoid surprises. And he wrote, I think one of the best things a driver can do is make sure there is plenty of space between you and other drivers, and to take my dad's advice and assume that everybody is an idiot until proven wrong. And then he says, during this exercise, I noticed the mistakes my dad was making. I noticed that he turned into the wrong lane and changed lanes in a place where it was not permitted.
Here we go again, right? So again, it's the lazy way of driving. It's not following the rules. It's the easiest way. Driving safe isn't easy sometimes. It's more convenient to do the wrong thing sometimes. And I'm not. Your dad is right. There's a lot of idiots out there. We'll just call them idiots. Okay. There's a lot of people that are unaware of what their situation is around them, whether they're idiots or just misinformed drivers or just poor drivers, whatever their title is. But it is amazing and great job. It is amazing. I just love you throwing your dad under the bus. How's that? because we hear this all over. And what it does is it just tells us the effectiveness of these enrichments. You know, that our kids are paying attention to what you're doing as an adult.
Yes.
And it goes to show you, if we keep doing driver's ed the old way, that's the way we get, the way of the parents. All right. By teaching our kids the right way in the beginning, and observe this, where we get to say, no, that's not right. And, when we look at fail rates of driver's tests, fail rates are not the fault of the student. It's the fault of how they were taught in the beginning, and their habits become the habits of the parents. And, no offense against any parent out there watching, but 99% of our parents today could not pass their driver's test today if they drove the way they drive every day. Think about that. So now you're the one teaching your son or daughter to drive, doing everything that your state is not going to allow, and you're creating these habits. And now they go for the most humbling test they take in their life, their driver's test. And then they can't perform it. I mean, they just can't do the performance because of the bad habits they've learned. So great observation. I'm not calling your dad an idiot. He's a great guy. Dads are awesome. So, but anyway, he probably should rewrite his testimony. So,
Well, I will say, one of the things that you always say is to be paranoid out there. And I think that's what the father was doing. But on the other hand, where he made some mistakes, I think the older you get, sometimes you get a little laissez-faire, as they say, and you kind of forget some of the nuances that you needed to do to be a better driver. And it's good to have reminders like your children.
yes.
Yes.
Yes. Awesome.
All right. Well, before we sign off, we want to thank you again for joining us today. We really appreciate it. Please email us your thoughts or your own driver observations or stories to DriveSafeRideSafe@gmail.com. And if you're interested in watching the replay podcast or sharing the podcast, you can go to our website at DriveSafeRideSafe.com/podcast/link, or watch the video podcast at youtube.com/DriveSafeRideSafe1. And that's the number, not the word. And until next time, remember to what?
Drive safe and ride safe.
All right. Well, this is episode 3 of Throwing Your Parents Under the Bus podcast. Thanks for joining us, and we hope you do it again.
Bye.